Gustavo Rivera, the new state senator from the state of New York, representing the 33rd district here in the Bronx, and we're delighted to have you here. And let's talk about the issues. When you got to Albany, the first thing that, one of the big issues now, of course, is the budget.
Right.
And Governor Cuomo's budget was a little bit controversial, but then it passed. And where did you stand on it, and what do you like about it, and what do you not like about it, and how does it affect the Bronx?
So, first of all, this year we had to make some very tough choices in the budget. And I knew that going in. There were a few things that I was disappointed that we didn't do, and I'm going to try to keep doing them. Now let's talk about one in particular, the so-called millionaire's tax, or the personal income tax surcharge. What that means is that New Yorkers who have more than $200,000 of taxable income a year as individuals, and $350,000 as a family of taxable income would continue to be charged a tax that they are paying right now. Now that's something that I believe that we needed, because based on the fiscal situation that we were in, we had to make some very tough choices. Now, I agree with Governor Cuomo that we cannot continue an unabated increase in spending every single year, particularly in healthcare and education. But if we're going to control those costs, we have to do so in a way that impacts the people that are the most needy in the least way possible. And that definitely corresponds to my district. And so I got 20 of my colleagues in the Senate to join me in writing a letter to the governor asking him to extend the personal income tax surcharge, and we had conversations about it. He is on the record as not supporting it, but we wanted to make sure that we could convince him. There's 2 senators right now on the Republican side that have been on the record as supporting it, because even though we passed the budget, we still can do it before December 31st. I still believe that we should be talking about it so that we can have more revenue. We're talking about $5 billion extra in next year.
That you would get from millionaires and billionaires.
That we would get from individuals making more than $200,000 of taxable income.
Now, this is different than what President Obama is proposing on the federal level. This is a state level, so that we don't get confused.
This is a state level, that's correct. What President Obama is doing at the national level is that just a few days ago, he said that he would not extend the Bush tax cuts. So that means that wealthier individuals who have a tax cut right now are the same individuals that would get an extra tax cut at the end of this year in the state if we do not extend personal income tax surcharge. But let's talk about what the budget actually does.
But but instead, by giving the tax break, by not extending it, and giving a break to the people who make more than $200,000, who's suffering? Where are they taking it from?
That is exactly what I was going to say. What it does, there's some things that it does with, as far as healthcare and education and public safety. These are the 3 things that are the most important to me, certainly, and to the people in my district. We have, as I said, a couple of school districts that are incredibly overcrowded. We have the issue of the CFE lawsuit. Now, that is the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. A few years ago, the state was sued, saying that they needed to provide an equal distribution of funding for education dollars to downstate. And we won the lawsuit. The lawsuit was won, and now we are owed a certain amount of money, particularly to build more schools. And that's something that the state, unfortunately, did not do this year. So that is something that I was disappointed in. Now, as far as the budget, I voted for, it's broken down to many bills. So there were 11 bills that we voted on. I voted yes on 9 of them and no on 2 of them. The no was on the revenue bill that did not include an extension to personal income tax surcharge. And the second one was called, its technical name of it is Article 7 language bill, which that means it changes the language in the law to affect the changes that you want to make. And that one was the one dealing with education changes, because I believe that we need to spend money more efficiently, certainly, but that the cuts were going to be too deep to the schools. Now, as far as healthcare, there was a Medicaid redesign team which redesigned the way that Medicaid works in the state of New York. Now, that is a positive thing. There were a few things that were in there, particularly for home health aides. We actually give them a living wage of $10 an hour guaranteed, which is something that did not exist before. Though now people actually have a bit more money to be able to maintain, keep their families going. And there were restorations for 42011 schools. which deal with schools for deaf and blind children, as well as Title 20 funding, and that refers to senior centers. So all of these things I voted for because they are impacting our district. 4 senior centers would have closed if we did not restore Title 20 funding.
In your district?
In my district.
Wow.
4, and 1 immediately outside, like literally on the other side of the line, right? My district ends here and I would have been outside. So thousands of seniors would have been impacted just in my district, and many, many thousands across the city of New York. We were able to restore that.
When some of these issues come up in Albany and some people are threatening, like the senior citizens you were just mentioning, and they're not aware of it because it's some legislative change that the news hasn't gotten to them yet. No. How do you get the word out to the community that you need support, that you need to mobilize the community to support whatever it is that you're trying to get for them or prevent from happening that is terrible for them?
This is why community-based organizations are so valuable. Before I get to them quickly, the press is a good way, right? You talk, we make sure that we are in our local papers. We obviously come on shows here on BronxNet, and we make sure that some of the local leadership knows about it. But then community-based organizations, having them connect to their membership and connect to the folks that go to their centers or go to their clinics. Or we try to make sure that we have the staff that's down here, because I have a very, very skilled staff down here in the district that have been going to all of these different meetings, whether it's the community boards, the precinct council meetings.
So aside from the issues that you just mentioned that were part of the budget debate, what are the issues that are coming up from out of the grassroots, from your district, when you have all these community meetings? What are the people in your district concerned about?
They're concerned about education. They're concerned about healthcare. They're concerned about public safety. These are some of the basic concerns.
What is the ethnic composition of the 33rd? A lot of them Latinos?
Most of them are. Most of them are. This is a district that is over 60% Latino, many Puerto Ricans, but a growing Dominican community, and a small, but it's a small as the whole district, a Honduran and a Garifuna community in the southeast part of the district. We had
a segment here about the Garifuna community in the Bronx.
So they're growing. It's a smaller percentage in the whole district, but they're absolutely, most of them that live outside of Honduras and other Central American countries live here in the Bronx.
Are there issues of particular interest to that Hispanic community that you deal with? Is immigration an issue, for example, on the local level?
It is. I should say as well that employment, unemployment is a very big issue. So economic development, making sure that we can create the conditions so that people will have jobs here locally, is a big issue. Now, as far as immigration, it certainly is. We're looking in ways that we can actually address that in a more macro level across the entire state, partnering up with organizations not only here in the city but across the state. I was actually very privileged to be one of the hosts in a forum during the Somos el Futuro weekend on immigration. It was incredibly well attended, and we had something like 10 experts on the board, on the dais, talking about different aspects of immigration and ways that we in the state.
And we should explain for the people at home who don't know, what is Somos el Futuro?
So Somos el Futuro.
It used to be Somos Uno.
That's correct.
Many years ago.
Somos Uno. But now Somos el Futuro is a legislative conference that happens every year. We are this was the 24th year, I believe. And what it is in Albany, a time when elected officials, Latino elected officials from all over the state, go to the state capitol and have different discussions about issues that are important to them. We celebrate Latino culture, we celebrate Latino political power, and we talk about the ways in which we can influence the state. And it is a time when all the elected officials can come together, and constituents from all across the state come up to Albany, so they can have also kind of direct access to us, which is incredibly important. And one of the other thing is that I've been doing for years for the Somos el Futuro conference is I've been part of the Model State Senate. That is a program that takes CUNY students, trains CUNY and some SUNY students, trains them for a few weeks, most of them Latino, trains them for a few weeks, and they go and they debate on the floor of the Senate, sitting in our chairs. They debate a bill on the floor. And this is the first year that I've been a faculty member on it for a decade, and this is the first year that I got to do it as a senator. And it was it was an immense privilege to be able to see these students who someday, I'm sure, might be my colleagues. So it was a great experience. So
we're almost out of time, but I do want to get to this other issue, very important to our community, to the Hispanic community now. And I'm talking about redistricting and how that affects, and explain to folks how that is important and what the role the census plays in the redistricting.
Well, redistricting refers to what happens after the census. Now, the U.S. Constitution requires that every 10 years, a census is done nationally that counts the population. And what we saw and the numbers that came back to us tells us that as far as the Latino community, we are now the largest minority community in the country. 1 out of every 6 people in this country are Latino. And what we've seen in the state of New York is that the growth of the Latino population, not only in the city, but certainly in places like Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, Long Island.
Majority in the Bronx, 53.5% of the Bronx is Latino now.
El Condado de la Salsa.
There you go.
No se olvide. So it is a huge important issue. Now, what happens now is that based on those population numbers, we get to redraw district lines. And I am a person who, along with many members of the Senate in the Democratic Conference, support an independent redistricting reform. Now, what does that mean? Right now, the way that this works is that legislators are the ones that draw the districts that they're in. I believe that should not be. I believe that we should not be picking our voters. I believe our voters should be picking us. And that we should create a commission, which is independent and nonpartisan, that draws the districts based on population.
Do we still have time for that?
I believe we do. I believe we do, and we need to fight for it, because what's important here is that having that commission, being able to draw districts that are non-political, so non-gerrymandered, right? The districts that are not, because the reason why the Republicans had a majority for such a long time is because they drew the districts to make sure they stayed in the majority. So this is incredibly important.
It's a fight every 10 years, the redistricting and how those maps are drawn and who falls, what politician falls into what map once they're redrawn. So you believe that an objective commission can do a much better job than the politicians?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. I should not be drawing the district. I'll give you a perfect example. One of my colleagues in the Assembly, Hakeem Jeffries, years ago he ran against a sitting incumbent, and then when he almost beat the incumbent, and so when the incumbent had to draw the district, he drew him out. Literally took a pen and said, "This block where Hakeem lives, get him out of there."
Belongs to another district.
Correct.
Now.
Artificially, just to make sure he wouldn't run.
Wow.
That's not acceptable. We should have districts which represent the populations that live across our entire state, and they should be drawn fairly. And that is what we're going to fight for. We're going to continue to fight for independent redistricting reform.
Senator, we wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you so much, brother.
And we're enthused by your energy. And you got to come back. I had like 50 other questions to ask you. So
I look forward to coming back.
We're going to do it again.
Anytime.
Thank you.